Jake Morrison sat in the big round room where all the alien leaders met. The air was thick and hard to breathe because so many different kinds of creatures needed different things to stay alive. Some needed hot air, others needed cold air, and some needed special gases that smelled bad. He looked around the table at 47 different alien faces. Some had big eyes like bugs, others had long necks like snakes. A few looked like giant plants with moving parts. They all spoke different languages. But special machines turned their words into English for Jake to understand. Jake had been coming to these meetings for 3 years. Every time humans wanted to do something, they had to ask permission from these aliens. Want to build a new city on Mars? Ask permission. Want to trade with another planet? Fill out forms and wait months for an answer? Want to mine rocks in space? Get approval from 17 different groups of aliens who all had to agree. It was getting very annoying next to. Jake sat his friends from Earth. Lisa Park ran the space colonies. She was smart and usually stayed calm, but Jake could see she was getting angry too. Admiral Carl Bennett was in charge of Earth's space navy. He kept his face blank, but his hands were tight on the table. Dan Phillips handled trade deals with other planets. He kept looking at his papers and shaking his head. Today was supposed to be different. Jake had asked to speak about mining rights in the Kepler star system. Humans had found valuable metals there that could help build better spaceships in space stations. They had done all the research, filled out all the forms, and waited patiently for 6 months. The snake-like alien named Vexthura was in charge of the meeting. Her skin was green and shiny, and she moved her head back and forth when she talked. She looked at Jake's request and made a sound like a laugh. "Your people are too young for such big projects," she said. Her words came out as hisses, but the machine made them sound like normal speech. Maybe in 100 years, when you learn how to behave properly in space. Jake felt his face get hot. Behind him, he could hear other humans in the room shifting in their seats. They had worked hard on this project. Human scientists had studied the Kepler system for 2 years. Human engineers had designed the best mining equipment. Human pilots were ready to fly there and start working. But this alien thought humans were like children who could not be trusted. The meeting got worse. Other aliens started talking about how humans were too aggressive, too quick to act, too eager to explore new places. He said humans needed to be watched carefully to make sure they did not cause trouble. Then came the final insult. Vexthura called for a vote on something called protective oversight of human space activities. This meant that aliens would send ships to watch everything humans did in space. Human captains would have to report to alien commanders. Human colonies would have alien inspectors living on them. Jake watched the vote happen with growing anger. 38 aliens voted yes. Only 9 voted no. The aliens who voted no were the few who actually liked humans and thought they were being treated unfairly. When the vote was finished, Vexthura smiled with her snake mouth. "It is decided. Human space travel will now be supervised by the Galactic Council for your own protection." That was when Jake had enough. He stood up slowly. His chair made a loud scraping sound on the smooth floor. Every alien in the room turned to look at him. Some had 2 eyes, some had more. All of them were staring. "We thank the Council for caring about us," Jake said. His voice was calm, but inside he was burning with anger. "But humans do not want your protection." The room exploded with noise. Aliens started making all kinds of sounds, clicking, growling, chirping, buzzing. Blah. The translation machines could not keep up with everyone talking at once. The big bug-like alien named Zethmer started laughing. "You cannot just say no, human. You signed the agreement to be part of the Galactic Council. You must follow our rules." Jake reached into his jacket and pulled out a piece of paper. It was old-fashioned to use paper when everyone else used computers, but somehow it felt right. Put it on the table where everyone could see it. Rule 847 of the Galactic Agreement. Jake read out loud. "Any member species may leave the Council if they give proper notice and pay all their debts." The room went completely quiet. In 3,000 years of the Galactic Council, no species had ever tried to leave. Lisa Park stood up next to Jake. "Our debts are paid," she said clearly. "Yeah. We have done everything we promised to do. One by one, the other humans stood up too. Admiral Bennett looked like a soldier ready for battle. Dan Phillips closed his thick books with a loud snap. Starting. Right now, Jake announced, humans are leaving the Galactic Council. We will find our own way out. They walked toward the big doors that led out of the meeting room. Their footsteps echoed in the silent chamber. Behind them, chaos started as alien voices rose in panic and confusion. Some were angry, some were scared, and some seemed confused about what had just happened. The doors closed behind them with a soft hiss. Jake looked at his three friends and smiled for the first time in months. Well, he said, that felt really good. Lisa laughed. I thought you were going to punch that snake. I wanted to, Jake admitted, but this was better. Admiral Bennett nodded approvingly. Sometimes the best fight is knowing when to walk away. Don Phillips was already on his phone, calling Earth. I need to speak to the president, he said. Tell her Phase 1 is complete. None of them knew that their simple act of leaving would shake the entire galaxy. They just knew they were tired of being treated like children, and they were clearly capable of taking care of themselves. As they walked down the long hallway away from the council chambers, Jake felt lighter than he had in years. For 3 years, humans had tried to prove they belonged in the galactic community. They had been polite, patient, and cooperative, and what had it gotten them? More restrictions, more supervision, and more condescending treatment from aliens. Who thought they knew better? Well, now those aliens would have to figure things out without human help. Jake wondered how long it would take them to realize what they had just lost. Behind them, in the council chamber, aliens were starting to understand that something very important had just happened. But they did not yet know just how important it would turn out to be. The humans were done playing by other people's rules. From now on, they would make their own. 3 weeks after the humans walked out, the big meeting room of the Galactic Council was buzzing with worried voices. Emergency meetings were happening every day now. Alien leaders were showing up at all hours as bad news kept coming in from across the galaxy. Vexthera coiled her snake body around her floating chair. Her usually shiny green scales looked dull and stressed. She had called this meeting because things were getting worse fast. Situation is very bad, she told the other aliens. Human colonies in 17 star systems have stopped talking to us completely. On the huge screen in the middle of the room, red dots appeared where human settlements used to keep in touch with alien monitoring stations. The Earth system itself showed up as a blinking yellow warning. It was still there, but the humans were not answering any official calls from the galactic government. A fat, blob-like alien named Yulgatha was shaking with worry. He was in charge of trade between different planets. This is terrible for business, he said, his voice sounding like bubbles popping. Humans controlled 37% of rare metal mining in the outer areas. Their farms fed 6 whole star systems. Their factories made things better and faster than anyone else. The room fell silent as everyone thought about what this meant. Humans had been much more important to the galaxy than anyone realized. Admiral Crickstel, who looked like a giant praying mantis, stood up stiffly. Maybe we should remind them who is in charge. Send some warships to show them we mean business. Absolutely not, interrupted Iodon, whose crystal body sparkled with rainbow colors. The humans had good reasons to be angry. We always ignored what they said and treated them like they did not know anything. The argument that followed showed how much the humans leaving had split up the alien alliance. Species that used to let the council handle everything now had to pick sides and make hard choices. Meanwhile, in a secret room deep inside the council, building an old alien named Thelmer was reading classified reports. His people were among the oldest in the galaxy, and they had survived by noticing things others missed. The reports were very disturbing. Human ships were not just ignoring alien radio calls, they were actively blocking them. Human colonies had put up new defenses overnight. Most worrying of all, human vessels had been seen in star systems they were not supposed to know about, far beyond where they had permission to go. Commander Silton, Thelmer called to his assistant, a younger alien whose tentacles crackled. With nervous energy, what do we know about human military strength? Not much, sir. They have been very secretive about their defenses. Official records show normal defensive fleets. Nothing special. Thelmer's ancient eyes narrowed. And unofficial records. There are none, sir. Every time we tried to learn more about human military assets, they politely but firmly said no. They said it was private information. For the first time in centuries, Thelmer felt real fear. In his long experience, species that were truly weak welcomed galactic protection. Those that refused such help usually had good reasons. Across the galaxy, the absence of humans was creating unexpected problems. The Trigari Syndicate, a group of aggressive merchants, immediately moved to take over human trade routes. Within days, they discovered why humans had been so successful in those dangerous areas. Human ships had been quietly fighting off much bigger threats that the Trigari had never even known about. On the mining world of Kepler 44b, where humans had been denied expansion rights, the snake aliens who moved in found their equipment breaking down mysteriously. Local conditions that human surveys had marked as manageable with proper preparation turned out to be much harder than expected. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had been the human representative to the Council's science department. She was now working in her new laboratory on the moon. She received a coded message from an alien scientist asking for help. Dr. Rodriguez, the message read, "We need consultation on several projects that humans used to manage. We will pay you well." Lena deleted the message without answering. She was the 15th human scientist to get similar requests in the past week. Apparently the Council was starting to realize what they had lost in the White House on Earth. President Helen Carter was reading intelligence reports from Director Alex Turner. The analysis was clear. The Galactic Council was falling apart. "How long before they come asking us to come back?" President Carter asked. "At the current rate, things are getting worse. Maybe 6 months or less," Turner replied. "The question is whether we want them to." President Carter smiled in a way that would have surprised the aliens if they could see it. "That depends on what they are willing to offer us." Neither of them mentioned the secret orders that had gone out to human commanders across the galaxy the day after they left the Council. Some preparations had been made long in advance, just in case talking failed. Around the galaxy, strange things were happening that the Council could not explain. Pirate fleets that had been quiet for years suddenly became very active.
The Blood Claw.
Raiders, led by a vicious alien warlord named Vexthel, attacked 3 star systems in 3 weeks. What puzzled the Council's military analysts was the timing. These attacks were too well planned, and the pirates knew too much about patrol schedules and trade routes. Someone had been keeping these threats under control, and that someone was no longer doing the job. Admiral Crixdell reviewed battle reports. In his command center, his bug-like mandibles clicked in frustration as he studied the displays. "How did pirates get such detailed information?" he demanded. "Unknown, Admiral. But it looks like they had outside pressure keeping them contained." With that pressure removed, the implication was scary. Someone had been fighting a secret war against piracy and chaos, a war the Council never knew existed. On Mars, General Patricia Hayes was watching the same pirate raids from her command center inside Olympus Mons Mountain. The room was carved deep into the rock and had displays showing not just the solar system, but detailed tracking of conflicts across half the galaxy. "What should we do, General?" asked Colonel Ryan Torres. "Let it burn for now," Hayes replied calmly. "We warned them about the Blood Claw build-up 2 years ago. They said our intelligence was wrong and that we were being too warlike. The truth that the Council was starting to suspect was much bigger than they realized. Humans had not just been members of galactic civilization. They had been its secret guardians, handling threats too small for the Council to notice, but too big for individual planets to manage. Dr. Franklin Moore had been in charge of human space traffic control. He now sat in his new office in the lunar city of Armstrong. Through his windows, he could see Earth rising over the lunar horizon. Beautiful and free. His desk held reports that would have shocked his former alien colleagues. Human merchant ships had not just been trading, they had been mapping, exploring, and cataloging threats across a region of space 3 times larger than anyone knew. Every human cargo ship captain had 2 jobs: business and gathering intelligence. The Galactic Council had been governing a civilization they barely understood, depending on human expertise they never recognized. On the other side of the galaxy, Captain Nina Blake commanded a stealth ship called Silent Observer. She was monitoring a conflict between two alien species that were clients of the Council. They had been fighting a border war for months, with casualties mounting daily. "Ma'am," reported Lieutenant Barry Chen, "Council peacekeepers are asking for our help with negotiations." Captain Blake checked her orders. The Earth government's directive was clear: watch only, do not get involved unless directly attacked. "Negative, Lieutenant. We are not part of their club anymore, remember?" What Captain Blake did not mention was that her ship's presence alone had previously stopped both sides from making the fighting worse. Human vessels had served as unofficial neutral parties, their very presence reminding fighters that someone was watching who might report excessive violence to higher authorities. Without that calming influence, the conflict was spinning toward full-scale war. Back in the council chambers, the emergency sessions had become permanent. Species that had barely spoken to each other in decades now found themselves forced to negotiate directly, without human go-betweens, who had become expert at finding common ground between very different cultures the galaxy was about to discover. That humans do not just plan for war, they plan for peace on their own terms. 6 months after humans left the Galactic Council, the crisis had become much worse than anyone expected. What started as a simple bureaucratic problem had turned into real danger for the entire galaxy. In the outer regions of space, pirate fleets that had been mysteriously quiet for years suddenly came back with a vengeance. The Bloodclaw Raiders, led by the vicious alien warlord Vextal, swept through 3 star systems in 3 weeks. Their ships were crude, but there were many of them, and they easily overwhelmed the light patrol vessels that the Council thought were enough to protect those areas. What confused the Council's military experts was the timing. These attacks were too well coordinated, and the pirates knew too much about patrol schedules and trade routes. Someone had been keeping these threats under control, and that someone was no longer doing it. Admiral Crickstell reviewed battle reports. In his command center aboard the massive warship Absolute Authority, his bug-like mandibles clicked in frustration as he studied the displays. How did pirates get such detailed information about our defenses? He demanded of his intelligence chief, Commander Sildock. "We do not know, Admiral. But the pattern suggests they had outside pressure keeping them contained. With that pressure removed, implication hung in the air like a bad smell. Someone had been fighting a shadow war against piracy and chaos, a war the Council never knew existed." Meanwhile, on Mars, General Patricia Hayes observed the same pirate raids from her command center deep inside Olympus Mons Mountain. Out! Was carved into solid rock and housed displays showing not just the solar system, but detailed tracking of conflicts across half the galaxy. "What do you recommend, General?" asked Colonel Ryan Torres, her chief of staff. "Let it burn for now," Hayes replied calmly. "We warned them about the Bloodclaw buildup 2 years ago. They classified our intelligence as worry from an overly warlike species. The truth that the Council was beginning to suspect was far more significant than they realized. Humans had not just been members of galactic civilization. They had been its unacknowledged guardians, handling threats too small for the Council to notice, but too large for individual star systems to manage. Dr. Franklin Moore used to run human space traffic control, sat in his new office in the lunar city of Armstrong. Through his windows, he could see Earth rising over the lunar horizon, beautiful and independent. His desk held reports that would have shocked his former Council colleagues. Human merchant vessels had not just been trading, they had been mapping, exploring, and cataloging threats across a region of space 3 times larger than officially acknowledged. Every human cargo ship captain had carried 2 sets of orders: commerce and intelligence gathering. The Galactic Council had been governing a civilization they barely understood, relying on human expertise they had never recognized. On the other side of the galaxy, Captain Nina Blake commanded the stealth reconnaissance vessel Silent Observer as it monitored the Andorian conflict. 2 client species of the Council had been engaged in a border dispute for months, with casualties mounting daily. "Ma'am," reported Lieutenant Barry Chen from the sensor station, "Council peacekeepers are requesting our assistance with mediation." "Captain." Blake checked her orders. The Earth government directive was clear. Observe only. Do not intervene unless directly threatened. "Negative, Lieutenant. We are not part of their club anymore, remember?" What Captain Blake did not mention was that her ship's presence alone had previously deterred both sides from escalating beyond small fights. Human vessels had served as unofficial neutral parties, their very presence reminding combatants that someone was watching. Someone who might report excessive aggression to higher authorities. Without that moderating influence, the Andorian conflict was spiraling toward full-scale war. Back in the council chambers, emergency sessions had become permanent fixtures. Species that had barely spoken to each other in decades now found themselves forced to negotiate directly. Without human intermediaries who had become expert at finding common ground between vastly different cultures, Counselor Iadan of the Centauri Alliance addressed the assembly, her crystalline form dim with exhaustion. "We must face reality. Humans were not just members of our civilization. They were its connecting tissue. Their withdrawal has exposed weaknesses we did not know existed." The response was immediate chaos. Representatives from 46 species began talking at once, each in their own language, overwhelming the translation systems. The noise continued for several minutes before Counselor Thelmer of the Ancient Eridani Collective finally restored order. "The human delegations served as more than representatives," he said, his ancient voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "They served as interpreters, mediators, and bridges between incompatible cultures. We mistook their diplomatic skill for weakness." In a secure chamber beneath the council complex, Intelligence Director Zex Hari reviewed the most classified reports available. The picture they painted was terrifying in its implications. Human space was not dark because they had withdrawn from civilization. It was dark because they had activated security protocols that were apparently in place long before they joined the council. Every attempt to penetrate human territory had been politely but firmly turned away by ships that appeared from nowhere, delivered their message, and vanished without a trace. The humans had not retreated from the galaxy. They had simply stopped pretending to be weak. On Luna, President Carter received her daily briefing from Intelligence Director Turner. The reports detailed council communications intercepts, piracy incidents, trade disruptions, and diplomatic breakdowns occurring across the galaxy. "Recommendations, Director?" she asked. "We wait," Turner replied. "They will come to us soon enough. The question is whether we take them back on their terms or ours." President Carter nodded, then activated her personal communication system. "Get me Admiral Scott Henderson on the Constitution." It is time for Phase 2. Cross-human space, sleeper protocols activated, ships that had been listed as decommissioned, powered up. Facilities that officially did not exist began full operations. Human civilization revealed that it had been preparing for this contingency since first contact with the Galactic Council. The most shocking revelation came from Dr. Elena Rodriguez's analysis of the situation. The former human liaison to the Council's scientific directorate had been quietly compiling data on galactic stability for years. The Council never understood how precarious their civilization was. She reported to President Carter during a secure video call. They built a house of cards and never realized humans were the foundation holding it up. Her data showed patterns that the Council had missed. Every major trade route that remained stable had human presence. Every potential conflict that had been resolved peacefully had involved human mediation. Every region that had avoided piracy had benefited from human security patrols. The aliens had not been governing a stable galactic civilization. They had been presiding over a barely controlled chaos that humans had been quietly managing behind the scenes on the mining world of Kepler for 4-B, where humans had been denied expansion rights. Snake-like aliens who moved in to replace them found their equipment failing mysteriously. Local conditions that human surveys had marked as manageable with proper preparation proved far more challenging than expected. What they did not know was that humans had spent months developing specialized techniques for operating in that environment. The aliens were trying to use standard equipment in conditions that required human innovation. Similar problems were occurring across the galaxy. Projects that had relied on human expertise were failing. Trade routes that had depended on human security were becoming pirate hunting grounds. Diplomatic initiatives that had required human cultural translation were collapsing into misunderstandings. Admiral Crickstell received another urgent report about pirate activity. This time, the Bloodclaw raiders had attacked a major shipping hub in the Vega sector, stealing cargo worth billions of credits and killing thousands of civilians. "Where are our patrol fleets?" demanded. "Spread too thin, Admiral. We have 47 systems requesting immediate assistance, but only 12 patrol groups available." Crickstell realized with growing horror that the Council's military had never been adequate for the job. Human forces had been filling the gaps, handling the smaller threats and preventing them from becoming larger ones. Now, those gaps were becoming chasms that were swallowing galactic civilization. The galaxy was about to discover that humans do not just plan for war, they plan for peace through strength, and they had been the strength holding everything together. 1 year after humans left the Galactic Council, the galaxy faced its darkest hour. What had started as embarrassment for the alien government had become a real threat to civilization itself. The Trigger A Hegemony War erupted without warning when trade disputes over former human routes turned into actual fighting. Two of the Council's most powerful military forces clashed in the Vega sector, their massive warships turning entire asteroid mining operations into floating debris. Counselor Vexthera received emergency briefings in her private chambers. Her snake-like body was coiled in stress patterns her species had not displayed in generations. The reports made terrible reading. 17 star systems in open war. 31 trade routes closed because of pirates, and 6 species threatening to leave the Council entirely. How did we not see this coming? She asked her aide, a nervous young snake alien named Colthy. With respect, Counselor, some did see it. The human reports from 3 years ago predicted exactly these conflicts. We dismissed them as warmongering. Vexthera hissed in frustration. She now remembered the human reports that had outlined detailed analyses of resource shortages, territorial tensions, and cultural problems that would inevitably lead to conflict without careful management. The Council had filed them away as evidence of humanity's unfortunate militaristic tendencies. Meanwhile, in the abandoned human embassy complex on Council Station, maintenance robots worked alone in chambers that once buzzed with diplomatic activity. The embassy's closure had seemed like a simple matter of removing furniture and transferring files. Nobody had realized how many critical functions the human staff had quietly managed: trade mediation, conflict analysis, cultural translation, resource allocation, oversight, intelligence synthesis, dozens of essential services that humans had provided so efficiently that other species had forgotten they were being provided at all. Director Zixari of Council Intelligence reviewed his most sensitive reports in a secure chamber deep within the station. What he had discovered about human capabilities during their time in the Council was almost unthinkable. Every human trade vessel had carried advanced sensor packages. Every human diplomat had possessed intelligence training. Every human colony had maintained defensive capabilities far beyond what they had officially declared. The species that the Council had viewed as eager, somewhat naive newcomers had actually been conducting the most sophisticated intelligence operation in galactic history. "They were mapping us," Zexhari told his senior staff. Every trade route, every military installation, every political alliance, they knew more about the galaxy than we did. Commander Sealdock, his primary analyst, displayed a holographic chart showing human ship movements over the past 5 years. The pattern was unmistakable, comprehensive, systematic reconnaissance of every major system, trade route, and political entity in Council space. Double quotes, "Sir, if they intended conquest. .. They could have achieved it at any time," Zexhari finished grimly. "The question is, what did they actually want?" The answer came from an unexpected source. In her private study, Counselor Iadon of the Centauri Alliance reviewed personal communications she had maintained with human diplomats. Unlike the formal diplomatic channels, these messages revealed genuine human perspectives on galactic civilization. The humans had not been planning conquest. They had been trying to save the Council from itself. Ambassador Jake Morrison's final personal message to her, "I'll send the day before the human withdrawal," contained a warning that now seemed prophetic. The Council's greatest weakness is not military or economic. It is the inability to see problems before they become crises. You have created a civilization that reacts instead of planning, that manages symptoms instead of causes. We tried to help you build something sustainable. Find another way. On Earth. President Carter held her weekly security briefing in the Situation Room. Beneath the White House, the chamber's displays showed not just the solar system, but detailed tracking of every major conflict and crisis. Developing across the galaxy assessment, Admiral? She asked Admiral Scott Henderson, who commanded humanity's true defensive forces. The Council's collapse is accelerating beyond our projections, Henderson reported. The Trigger Hegemony War has destabilized the entire Eastern Arm. Piracy in the Outer Rim has increased by 400%. 6 client species are considering withdrawal from the Council. Casualties mounting daily. Conservative estimates suggest 2 billion deaths if current trends continue. President Carter studied the displays showing human ship positions across the galaxy. Unlike the Council's assumptions, humanity's withdrawal had not meant retreat. Human vessels maintained positions throughout known space, observing, analyzing, and preparing. Recommendations? General Hayes, participating via secure link from Mars, provided the military assessment. We could intervene selectively. End the piracy, mediate the major conflicts, stabilize the trade routes. The Council's forces are stretched too thin, but ours are not. Director Turner added the intelligence perspective. The Council is beginning to realize what they have lost. Informal channels suggest they are preparing to approach us. President Carter nodded slowly. When they do, what are our terms? The question hung in the air. Humanity had withdrawn from a system that treated them as junior partners despite their superior capabilities. Any return would need to acknowledge the new reality. On Council Station, an emergency session debated the previously unthinkable, formally requesting human assistance. The chamber that had once dismissed human concerns now faced the consequences of that dismissal. Counselor Thelmer addressed the assembly, his ancient voice carrying the weight of civilizations. We must acknowledge what has become undeniable. Humans were not seeking our protection, they were providing it. Our civilization did not function despite their presence. It functioned because of it. The admission sent shockwaves through the chamber. Species that had viewed humans as upstart. Newcomers now confronted the possibility that they had been the galaxy's most sophisticated civilization all along. Admiral Crickstell of the Hegemony stood, his military bearing unable to conceal his species' growing desperation. Then, we request their aid. Formally, whatever the cost. And if they refuse, asked Trade Minister Yulgatha, the silence that followed provided its own answer. Without human intervention, the Galactic Council faced not just political crisis, but potential collapse of interstellar civilization itself. The breaking point came when the Andorian conflict exploded into full-scale genocide. 2 species that had been skirmishing for months suddenly began systematic extermination campaigns against each other's civilian populations. Council peacekeeping forces, already stretched thin across 17 other conflicts, could do nothing more than watch helplessly as billions died in the Armstrong city on Luna. Ambassador Jake Morrison, now Director of Galactic Affairs for the Independent Earth Government, received an encrypted message via diplomatic channels. The sender was Counselor Iodon, and the message was simple: we need to talk. Jake forwarded the message to President Carter with his recommendation: it is time, Madam President. They are ready to listen. The galaxy stood at a crossroads. Trillions of beings faced death or displacement as their civilization crumbled around them. The question now was whether humanity would choose to save the civilization that had dismissed them. And if so, on what terms? President Carter looked at the displays showing the spreading chaos across the galaxy. Human ships remained in position, waiting for orders. Human colonies stood ready to provide aid. Human military forces prepared for deployment. But this time, if humanity returned to galactic affairs, it would be as the acknowledged leaders they had always been, not as the junior partners they had been forced to pretend to be. The answer would reshape galactic politics for generations to come. The meeting took place not in the Grand Council chambers, but in a neutral location, Kepler Station, a human-built facility in the disputed border zone between Council space and the independent Earth territories. The symbolism was not lost on anyone. Humans choosing the location, humans setting the rules. Ambassador Jake Morrison arrived aboard the sleek diplomatic vessel New Horizon, accompanied by a delegation that included President Carter herself, Admiral Henderson, and Director Turner. Their ship docked alongside vessels from 12 different council species, but the humans made no effort to match the elaborate diplomatic ceremonies of their former colleagues. The conference room was starkly functional compared to the ornate council chambers. Human efficiency on display, clean lines, perfect environmental controls, and holographic displays that responded instantly to user commands. Counselor Vexera noticed immediately that the technology was more advanced than anything in council space. President Carter took her seat across from the assembled alien representatives. She was flanked by her advisors, but all attention focused entirely on her. At 62, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had spent a year watching her predictions come true. "Thank you for coming," she began simply. "I understand you wish to discuss renewed cooperation between humanity and the Galactic Council." Counselor Thelmer, serving as the Council's primary representative, spread his tentacles in a gesture of respect. "Madame President, the situation has become challenging. We believe mutual benefit could be achieved through re-engagement." Challenging. President Carter repeated the word with mild amusement. "Director Turner, could you provide the current situation assessment?" Turner activated the room's holographic display, showing a real-time map of the galaxy. Red zones indicated active conflicts, amber showed regions under piracy threat, and pulsing indicators marked humanitarian crises. Nearly a third of Council space showed some form of instability. "The Trigara Hegemony War has claimed approximately 1.8 billion lives," Turner reported clinically. "Piracy incidents have increased by 380%. Trade routes covering 47 systems remain closed. 6 species have filed formal withdrawal notices from the Council. 3 more are expected within the month." The silence that followed was profound. These were not just statistics, they represented the collapse of galactic civilization. Admiral Henderson added the military assessment. "Council forces are spread beyond their operational capacity. Response times to critical incidents have increased from hours to weeks. Several client species have stopped requesting assistance entirely." Counselor Iodon leaned forward, her crystalline form refracting the display's light. "We acknowledge our errors. Question is whether cooperative solutions remain possible." President Carter studied each alien representative in turn. These beings had dismissed humanity as naive newcomers, had rejected human warnings, and had imposed restrictions that treated Earth civilization as a junior partner, requiring guidance. "Cooperation requires mutual respect," she said finally. "The previous relationship was based on the assumption that humanity needed galactic guidance. Current events suggest otherwise." Ambassador Morrison activated another display, this one, showing human ship positions across the galaxy. The pattern revealed the truth that the Council had never suspected humanity had maintained. Extensive defensive and intelligence networks throughout known space, even while officially subordinate to Council authority. "During our membership, we identified 847 potential crisis points," Morrison explained. "We submitted detailed analyses and recommended preventive measures. The Council dismissed 94% of our recommendations as unnecessarily alarmist." Display shifted to show specific examples, the exact systems now experiencing the worst conflicts. The trade routes that had become piracy corridors, the resource disputes that had escalated to war. Every crisis had been predicted by human analysis and ignored by Council. "Bureaucracy," Counselor Vexthera coiled in visible distress. "We did not understand the scope of your capabilities. You did not ask." President Carter replied bluntly.
God.
Assumed we were seeking protection rather than offering it. Admiral Krikstel of the Hegemony military spoke for the first time, his insectoid voice tight with barely controlled desperation. Can these situations be resolved? Admiral Henderson answered with military precision. The piracy problem could be eliminated within 6 months with proper fleet coordination. The Trigari Hegemony War could be ended within weeks through targeted intervention. Trade route security could be re-established in 3 months. But not by Council forces alone, President Carter added. Your military doctrine is reactive. You respond to crises after they have developed instead of preventing them. General Hayes participated via secure link from her Mars command center. Human doctrine emphasizes prevention through intelligence and presence. We do not wait for wars to start. We prevent them from starting. The implication was clear. Human re-engagement could solve the galaxy's current crises, but only on human terms. Counselor Thelmer spread his tentacles in a gesture of submission rarely seen from his ancient species. What would be required for renewed cooperation? President Carter had been waiting for this question. She activated a prepared presentation showing her administration's terms for re-engagement with galactic civilization. First, recognition of human autonomy. No more protective oversight of human territories or activities. We govern ourselves. Second, equal partnership in council decisions. Human votes carry weight proportional to human contributions to galactic stability. Third, integration of human security doctrines into council policy. Prevention over reaction. Intelligence over bureaucracy. Fourth, unrestricted human access to all regions of council space for trade, exploration, and security operations. Fifth, establishment of joint crisis response protocols with human forces taking lead roles in conflict prevention. Each term represented a complete reversal of the previous relationship. Instead of junior partners seeking galactic approval, humans would become senior partners providing galactic stability. Trade Minister Yulgatha wobbled with concern. These terms would effectively place human interests above council authority, but President Carter corrected. These terms would place galactic stability above bureaucratic pride. The council can continue governing internal affairs, but galaxy-wide security, trade protection, and crisis prevention would operate under human coordination. The alien representatives exchanged glances, complex communications passing between species through subtle gestures and chemical signals. The choice they faced was stark: accept human leadership in exchange for galactic stability, or maintain bureaucratic control while their civilization collapsed. Counselor Iadon broke the silence. Implementation timeline? Admiral Henderson provided the answer. Human forces could begin crisis intervention within 72 hours of agreement ratification. Full security protocols could be operational within 6 months. And if the Council declines these terms, asked Counselor Vextara. President Carter's expression did not change, but her words carried the weight of certainty. Then you continue managing your crises alone. We have built a successful, independent civilization. We do not need the Council, but the Council apparently needs us. The meeting continued for several more hours as details were negotiated and clarified. But the fundamental dynamic had been established. Humanity was not rejoining galactic civilization as junior partners seeking protection. They were accepting senior partnership roles in exchange for providing the protection the galaxy desperately needed. 3 days later, the Galactic Council ratified the Treaty of Kepler Station by a vote of 41-6. The 6 dissenting votes came from species too proud to accept the new reality, but they were overwhelmed by the pragmatic majority, who recognized that pride was a luxury their dying civilization could no longer afford. Within a week, human ships began appearing throughout the galaxy, not as invaders or conquerors, but as guardians implementing the security doctrines that should have been adopted years earlier. The Bloodclaw Raiders found their main base surrounded by human stealth vessels that had somehow penetrated their defenses without being detected. The pirate warlord Vextel surrendered, without firing a shot when he realized his entire fleet was outgunned and outmaneuvered. The Trigari Hegemony War ended when human mediators presented both sides with detailed evidence of third-party manipulation. That had deliberately escalated their conflict. Faced with proof of outside interference, two species redirected their anger toward their true enemies. Trade routes that had been closed for months reopened under human protection. Humanitarian aid flowed to devastated systems under human escort. Diplomatic solutions emerged for conflicts that had seemed hopeless. Ambassador Morrison, now elevated to Secretary General of Galactic Affairs, sent his first official report to President Carter. Phase 3 complete, Madam President. The galaxy is learning that true strength comes not from demanding respect, but from earning it. The humans had walked away from the table, and when they came back, they brought their own chairs.